Hey, this is Ken at Advantage Tutoring, and it's my job to get you past. Man, you know how they say a camera adds 10 pounds? I must have like 5 cameras on me. Jesus Christ. Anyway, it's my job to get you past the Series 7 exam. And what a lot of people have a problem with is the yield curve and the yield spread, the widening and narrowing. So I'm going to show you a very simple way. Okay, so we should know what a normal yield curve is, right? So short-term yields, short-term years, lower yield, the longer we want to borrow it, the more risky it is, the farther we got, the more it is. So the way it goes is the longer I need to borrow it from you, the more I'm going to have to pay you, right? That makes sense. Risk reward. If I'm going to borrow money from you for like a week, yeah, you might not even charge me anything, I hope. But if it's going to borrow for like 5, 10, 15 years, yeah, you're going to be like, I need to get paid. So a normal yield curve looks like this, right? So boom, we have a low rates here, high rates farther out. That's our normal yield curve. Now, let's say the Fed starts raising rates. And remember, when the Fed raises rates, they're raising the discount rate, which is a short-term rate. So the short-term, remember, long-term bonds move more than short and medium terms. We got that. That's not a problem. Long-term bonds move more than short-term bonds. We always know that. And low coupon bonds move more than high coupon. That's a fact. That's volatility, duration, all that stuff. But yields are opposites. When you're talking about yields on bonds, it's a short-term goes first because the Federal Reserve adjusts the yields and they do the short-term, which is a discount rate, which is literally an overnight rate. Remember, the discount rate is the rate that the Federal Reserve lends to their banks. So again, the discount rate is a rate that the Federal Reserve lends to the member banks. They borrow it. Usually they borrow when they're under or close to the reserve requirement, which is like around 10%. If you remember my fractional banking video. They only keep about 10%. That's all they have to. They lend out the rest. They sound the same, so I'm just going to go with it. So the discount rate is the rate that the Federal Reserve lends to banks for overnight lending. And then the Fed funds rate, just is the rate that banks lend to each other. Overnight lending, that's the most volatile rate. It's also the lowest because it's really short term. So now the Fed will start raising rates like they've been doing since for a year now. Now remember, so we all know my students wouldn't fall for this, and most students wouldn't. That when Jerome Powell said a year and a half ago that I'm going to start raising rates like you haven't seen before, that usually means bonds are going to go down in price. And they did that, right? So Signature Bank and once Silicon Valley just said, you know what, screw it. I know that bonds will go down in value. They're just going to hold on to these bonds anyway, when they could have sold the bonds. Literally, how often does it happen where the Fed goes, we're going to put the company in a recession and warning, and we're going to jack the rates up. Who'd have thought that prices of banks would go down? Literally everyone who took the Series 7 in the last 30 years, okay? Off on that one now. So as the Fed raises rates, the short-term yields will rise. Boom, boom, boom. They're rising. And what happens is we're going flat, and then it becomes what they call an inverted curve, right? Where the short-term yields are higher than the long-term. Now, eventually, the long-term will follow, right? But it's like a tanker, right? You turn, and then it takes like a tanker ship. It takes like a year to follow. So these rates go up, the short-term ones go up, and then later, as we go on, the long-term rates will start going up also. And they'll eventually go back to normal, but it'll be a higher reality. But we do think that if we see an inverted yield curve, what is going to happen? The Fed is going to start lowering rates most likely and bring it back down to normal that way to get us out of the recession. Okay, now that is a normal yield curve, an inverted yield curve, and flat. Okay, that's it. Now, the question people get are, what is the yield spread analysis? How do they do this? So we're going to do this. I'm going to say the word do this a bunch of times when I say do this. So let's pretend this is the treasuries. We'll call the treasuries, okay? We'll just call the T-bonds, okay? Just call them that. Let's call them treasuries. Why not? That's the yield in the treasury, and that's the no default return. Now, corporate bonds will always, I can't say this enough, will always be higher than the treasuries. Why? Because they can't print their own money. So corporate bonds will always be higher than the treasuries. It's just a thing. It's never not the truth. So let's put this down here. Corporates are that one, and we'll say treasuries are that line, just because I got to move these things around, make it neater. Now, can we agree that if you buy something, the price goes up, right? So if you buy something and buy a lot of it, the price will rise. So if the price rises, well, what happens when bond prices rises? Well, the yields drop, okay? And what happens when people sell bonds, the price goes down, which means the yields go up. It's like the teeter-totter, right? So if bond prices go up, yields go down. Bond prices go down, yields go up. And what forces that? When people buy a lot of bonds, the price goes up. When they sell a lot of bonds, the prices go down. So let's say we're heading into a great economy, a really good economy, okay? People are going to go, you know what? I own a treasury. I don't need to be as safe. So I'm going to start buying corporate bonds. I'm going to buy the less risky bonds, which is going to force the price up. The price will go up. Okay, let me put it over here so it's less confusing. The price goes up, but if the price goes up, the yield goes down. So look what happens. They get a little, they get a little closer. And then what happens is, in reality, especially in this time, the treasuries. So if you're going to buy the corporates, you got to sell something. So you're going to sell the treasuries, which is going to force the price down. And that means the yield is going to go up. So look, they got closer together. So if the yields get closer together between the corporate and the treasury, they will never cross. If they get closer together, that means the economy is in a better place because people are less fearful. They're more willing to take risks. They go risk on. They're putting risk on, and then they're not taking risk off. So they're buying corporates and selling the treasuries, and that's forcing the yield to get closer together. But now let's say what might happen this fall, whatever. People are more worried. Okay, people are worried that the shit's going to hit the fan. People's going to go bad. So they're going to start selling the corporates, which is going to cause what? So if you start selling corporates, that means your yields are going to go up. And then they're going to take that money and start buying treasuries, go to a flight to safety. So what's going to happen is the prices are going to go up and the yield is going to go down. So they get farther apart. That's called widening. So if the yield spread is widening, that means people think the economy is not going to do so well. If the economy, if they get closer together, that means we think the economy is going to do well. So again, yield spread analysis is looking at the spread or the credit yield or the credit spread. They use the word credit spread on like 4 different things. It's so confusing, but it's the difference between the two. So the wider it gets, the worse the economy might be, and the closer it gets, the better. So again, if we always remember, like widening means weakening. I use that for my futures too. So widening means that. So think about if it's a bad economy, you got to open your arms wider to get more stuff in because you need it. So like almost like if you're fishing, if you have not very good time, you cast a wider net to catch more things. And if it's a very bountiful thing, you might narrow the net because you don't want to catch as much. So remember, during a good economy, they narrow. During a bad economy, they widen. I hope that helps. I hope I didn't take too long to bore the shit out of you on this. I think this stuff is exciting. I love doing this. So please, if you like what I'm doing and you don't, and I don't offend you too much, please feel free to share and like this stuff. Also, check me out every Tuesday and Thursday night on YouTube. I have a live Q&A. Ask on any licensing exam. Boom. I'll see you. Wash your hands. Y'all have a good day.